everyone, welcome back to the stage for our last but not least session, hosted by Jeff with Dave and Tim, who will talk about building a global staffing organization and using the current synergies to make a big staffing business globally. I will hand over to Jeff and now enjoy the session, and then join us after the session for the World Staffing Summit Awards ceremony, where we will show the top 15 staffing owners and operators to watch for the next year. Enjoy and see you later.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jan. Excited to be here, guys. And being the final session of the day, we're going to have to bring the energy. And in a traditional conference, I would always announce we're between the audience and the cocktails reception. So if you are feeling like a cocktail, please jump on the bandwagon, have a cocktail while you listen to us. We won't want to hold you up. All right. So as the final session of the day, it's amazing to be part of the World Staffing Summit. It's been an amazing day of content, from diversity to technology to remote work. The content has been second to none, and it's been amazing to be part of it. I want to thank Gustav team and the World Staffing Summit for putting this on and bringing us all together. I know with the current circumstances, it's nice to see a lot of friendly faces over the day that we have seen at different venues over the years and conferences. So without further ado, wanted to bring on the last section here, which is entitled, "It's Never Been Easier to Take Your Staffing Business Global." And, what has really come about in the recent years, this past year, is the idea of border and location is having less and less relevance. And so happy to present on this topic. And I've got some great presenters that are on our panel here today. We've got Dave Nitz from NPA Worldwide Global Networks, Recruitment Networks. And we've got Tim Auger from, I always get that wrong, Dave, because I come from Canada and I give the Quebec accent on that, but it could be Auger or Auger. But I know you're going to correct me. He's a senior director at the MRI Networks. So without
anything, just call me early.
Yep. I wanted to have you guys introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your organizations, because they're very unique in the aspect of bringing firms together to help each other expand their businesses. And what you've both experienced and why you're here today is expand their businesses globally. So Dave, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Tim or Jeff. I really appreciate it. And hey, before I introduce myself, I want to thank Jan and the people at Gustav. I mean, it really is wonderful to see other people. I know we're all kind of trapped in our houses and doing our deal, but it is great to see other people. My name is Dave Ners. I am president of NPA Worldwide. NPA Worldwide is a recruitment network. It's a membership organization. Our members are the owners of the network that we run here. And we've been around for 65 years. And our purpose is to help facilitate split placements between our members. With that, Tim. You're muted, Tim. Sorry.
It's a tough way to start off, for sure. Is that better? Yes. And it is Tim Auger, but again, call me whatever, just as long as you call me early in the opportunity. So yeah, I work for MRI Network. We are a global organization of franchise owners. We have about 400 network members in the US and across the globe. Also been around for a while, Dave. We were founded in 1965. So I don't know where that puts us now, somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 years or so, right? So, and yeah, we, like I said, we are global, and we are always looking for opportunities to expand our business, both domestically and with our clients and new clients overseas as well too.
So Jeff, you're muted now, but just to build on you wanted us to give a little background on our organization. So
Correct.
as Tim pointed out, they're a large organization, and we happen to be large in a different kind of a way because we're about 570 members on a global basis. A little bit less than 2/3 of those in North America, and the rest spread around the world. But each member is an independent owner of a recruitment business. Some of them do pure contingent search, some do retain, some do staffings. It's a mixed bag in terms of what each member does, and it kind of depends on their locations in some cases and their specialties. So we work a wide range of specialties. Anywhere from accounting, finance, across the IT, engineering, manufacturing, chemical process, legal, agribusiness, a bunch of different things. So what's nice is from a global standpoint, they have a peer network that they can work with. If they need to place somebody in Europe, they have people they can work with. If there's somebody in Europe that wants to place somebody in Asia, they have a connection that they can make. And that's one of the things that makes the global nature of business a little bit easier nowadays. But with that, I'll turn it over. Tim, you maybe want to expand on MRI.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So MRI is really known more for its permanent placement. Executive search is really where we've kind of built our reputation. That's in our DNA. That's how we were founded way back in the day by our founder, Alan Schoenberg, who many people don't know. He was one of the first people to do company paid fees. Remember back in the day, the candidate used to have to pay the fee for perm placement. And Alan Schoenberg was one of the leaders of the company paid fee. So I know we're all happy about that trend for sure. But as I said, we do mainly perm place. That's what we're mainly known for. I run our contract staffing division. So we have a very robust contract staffing division. And the way that it works, it's kind of interesting. So as I mentioned, we have about 400 different network members, franchises across the globe. Any contractors that are placed on assignment through our network members actually come through me. They come through MRI Contract Staffing. We're kind of the single point of contact. We sign the contracts. We take along with our back office partner, the employer of record responsibility. So we try to make it as simple and as painless as possible for our network members to offer contract staffing services to their clients. Because as you guys both know, contracting is a very different beast as far as the legal, the employment law, the tax implications, all that stuff that goes hand in hand with contract staffing as well.
For sure. Well, and on this session, we want to have kind of an open discussion, and as questions come in from the audience, we'll also bring them in. But really, to set the kind of the groundwork, we wanted to talk about the why. Why are you starting to see the opportunities continue to expand in such an exponential fashion that makes sense for organizations to take their business global? Talk about some of the pitfalls and some of the obstacles that you can encounter while dealing with taking your staffing business global. And then, of course, where there's obstacles, there's always solutions, right? And want to talk about actually some of the ease of doing business globally now that there's solutions out there in various ways to deal with the various potential obstacles that are out there. And then if there's any case studies of members that you have within your organizations that have said, okay, let's attack this global business and go after it. It'd be great to hear from you guys some success stories as well. So, in thinking about going global, the audience is really a global audience, which has been fantastic. But the SIA stats it's about a $3.6 trillion market now that's out there in the contingent workforce and the contract staffing business and the gig economy altogether. The US makes up about 30% of it, which is significant. But when you only think it's 30%, wow, there's a big market out there. And SIA stats, there is about 14 major markets out there that make up about 87% of the total market, including Japan, UK, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Canada, and Australia. Some fairly sizable markets that have a lot of spend and usage of staffing and recruiter services. So there is a big market out there outside of your borders. So whoever's listening, wherever you are, looking outside of your borders has never been easier, and there's lots of opportunities to increase your business. The venue we're talking today on a remote basis around the world is a testament to that. And so Dave and Tim, you can trade off on this, but what are some of the opportunities and why are your members really starting to think global? Is it a client-driven basis? Is it demographics? Is it the talent? What are some of the trends and the opportunities you're seeing? Why?
I'll jump in, Dave, if you want. I'll kind of that was a lot to unravel there, Jeff. So we got piece by piece. First of all, the title of our session, it's never been easier. So I've been doing this for 8 years internationally, domestic contract staffing for a lot longer than that, about 25. I don't know what it was like 8 years ago, but it's not easy now. So we should probably, maybe take, the time is absolutely right. The market is huge. It's even more important for us to focus on international business for sure, to keep our clients and our candidates happy. But to say it's easy, yeah, it's not easy per se, because especially on the contract staffing side, I think it's a little bit different on the perm placement. But with contract staffing, you've got so many legal, international tax situations, immigration laws, things like that. So there are a lot of moving pieces to the business. But if you align with a good partner that can help you kind of work your way through the back alleys of all those different areas that you might have to deal with, then you'll be in good shape. I think one thing that I've said frequently about the business that I'm in, contract staffing and interim solutions, is it's really kind of like two different businesses. There's the talent acquisition. You have to go find your client and find your candidate and make that match. That's what we do as recruiters. That's where we really add value, is by finding high quality people to put to work for our clients. But there's that whole other piece, that whole very important piece of paying and billing and collecting and making sure that we're complying with all the rules and regulations, either in the US or elsewhere. So it's almost like two different businesses you have to master. You've got to be good at finding the people, first of all, but you have to be darn good at making sure that we're paying them and billing and complying with all the rules and regulations that we have to in the international marketplace.
So why are some of the companies that you work with going global or seeing the opportunities to test the waters and take that step into the unknown with some of those pitfalls and obstacles?
Well, let me take a shot at that one, Jeff. And I would say, if you're looking for like the next hot market to chase, this is not it. As Tim pointed out, this is difficult work and has been for a long period of time. So I think what drives you there is a client or a candidate, and it's an opportunity. At this point, I would say that there's a lot of people who work in the staffing, the recruitment space, that don't talk about international work, global placement with their clients. That's a missed opportunity, because at some point, your client is going to come across the need. They need to know that you have that ability, and you're really a problem solver for them at that point, because the HR person that wakes up in the UK on Thursday morning, and somebody tells them they need to have temporary contract assignment for some sort of work in Canada within 2 weeks, that's a problem. And you can solve that for them if you're in that conversation with them early. So I would say what's driving this opportunity would be support of a client. And the other thing that goes along with that, if you're not talking to your clients about your capabilities and putting some sort of global capability together, then they're going to be bringing competitors into your account. So they're going to need to solve the problem, and it's not going to be you solving it. So you are going to have a new competitor from a different location who's now within your account. So I'd say it's a lot of cases it's client driven is what's making this happen, Tim and Jeff.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Dave. I think another thing, I mean, obviously, personally, globalization, and, in some places that's not the most favorite word. I'm a big fan of globalization. I think the world is getting smaller and we're all, becoming part of the global community for sure. Jeff, getting back to one of your first questions, I mean, what has driven a lot of this is looking for cheaper labor solutions, obviously, right? So I used to work in the Bay Area, and, had a lot of high-tech clients that were looking for primarily, in a lot of cases, developers, coders, et cetera, that they could find at a way less expensive in other countries than they could in the US. So that led to kind of, you might have heard of like the follow the sun model, where these big global companies really like to have operations in, around the world to take advantage of time zone differences, labor cost differences, et cetera, and really, kind of connect their logistical supply chain. So I think the differences in the cost of labor is what really drove this. But I love what Dave said. I've always said the best place to get new business is with existing clients. So you already have your inroads made with your existing customers. You've earned their trust. You've got great relationships, but they might not well know that we can provide international solutions as well too. So you have to talk that up all the time. I think that's kind of the most common model for us, is where we're working with a company in the US that has international needs, and we say, hey, we can help you there too. And then that develops into a good opportunity.
Yeah, and there was a lot of conversation on other sessions around vendor consolidation and optimization. And when that happens in these procurement models, it often bubbles up to who can do the most for us. And in a lot of cases, if it's an international or multinational client, they will look to the multinational capabilities of their vendor community to say, well, if you can help us in 10 different countries versus just one, that will rank you higher in these procurement mechanisms. And especially when they're starting to roll out the large MSP programs and the contingent workforce programs around the world now to gain visibility into their total spend worldwide and their headcount and risk and all those other things that traditional programs that have centralized wanted to do. They're going to look to you as the vendors, right, to say, can you help us in these multiple locations? So you guys are 100% correct on the client need, and being able to offer that is fantastic.
I'd say the other reality that's going to change things a lot in the short term is COVID. So what's happened around the world, I was just communicating with one of our former board directors today, and he's in Indonesia. He worked in an office forever and ever, and now he's been at home for a year. We have, I don't know how many of us are now working from home. Our employers, our managers, our leaders didn't believe we were working when we were at home at one point. That myth has been broken, and I think the permanence of place is less important to employers than it was in years past. That's going to change the way they look at their labor forces. So if you think back, 10 years ago, people were looking outside of their resident markets for lower cost labor, for things like accounting or overnight engineering or CAD development work, or all sorts of things were being done in remote markets because of labor costs. And there were only big companies that had confidence in doing that. But now that managers and companies have found that they can have remote workforces and still be full functioning, maybe even more productive in some cases, it's going to open up a world of opportunity, no pun intended.
Yeah, it really has accelerated the business models that were starting to get some traction. The last year has truly accelerated a number of the different business models and the way we're starting to think about work as well. We in our industry, in the staffing industry, are always thinking about what's the future of work look like. But when the traditional USA Today or Forbes magazine or all of the media out there, they're all talking about what's the future of work going to look like, because quite honestly, the way we work changed overnight in March. We all just started to do this, and I often will laugh, but I will get up in the morning and I say, I'm going to go zoom around the world, which would have taken 4 different flights and 3 days of travel from here to there to everywhere, and a lot of logistics and time consumption. Whereas I can wake up in the morning and be in 15 different countries throughout the day. So really the idea of how we're going to work and the talent pools as well. So it's finding clients. How will you find global clients? Well, use your existing client base to maybe bring you international, or vice versa. You know, good prospectors now can hop on a Zoom call with someone in the UK, and it's not about taking them to the coffee shop anymore because the coffee shop is closed with most of the lockdowns around the world. And they can then say, hey, give their value prop to someone in a different jurisdiction very quickly. So, you know, it really has opened up your prospecting to a very different, a much larger prospect list than just your local community providing local type talent pools. So, you know, the opportunity is there to expand, and different ideas on how to expand. Some of the potential obstacles or other things that your members or you've seen through experience in going global is, you know, there's also the talent side of it. And I think I've answered some of the questioning around talent pools. But it used to be very much you would want a local recruiter doing the recruitment locally because they were in that network, they had history there, and there was lots of referrals on a personalized basis. You know, how has that changed now? And is that making it easier to recruit globally with the different ways we're doing business now with remote work, remote talent, easier to access through technology? What are some ideas on finding talent as a big part of, because that's our assets that we sell to the clients? Mute. I can't hear.
Okay, Tim's muted. I mean, I think that, Jeff, I think talent obviously needs to be found locally. I mean, moving talent is not, I've not seen any evidence of that being a reality. So in every case, I mean, the market where you want people has to be the market where you look for people. You don't define the location for the job and then find people to move to it. That's not really effective in employment or in recruitment. So I think in a lot of cases, you're either going to have to develop that capability to find local talent someplace outside of your local market, or you're going to have to develop connections with people who can work with you to do that. And Tim, you might have some different perspective on that. Still muted.
Oh.
Okay, we'll look for help on that one.
Yep.
So Jeff, I mean, I would just say that some of the things that have eased this a little bit and this is a great example of it today. I mean, people have gotten comfortable with video communication technology. I can tell you that, you know, we have a 570 plus member network, and at one point I suggested that we have more video meetings, and, you know, somebody wanted to hit me over the head because it was a crazy idea. It was complicated. It was, you know, intimidating. People have gotten really used to it. So video interviewing is, you know, a much more common thing. So you don't have to be around the corner from somebody to interview them anymore. And that, I mean, previously, you know, a lot of recruiters brought people in-house to interview them, just not a necessity anymore. And that really helps a lot. That, you know, that has changed in very recent times. I would say in the last year, it's become very commonplace. There's still some things that are quite difficult for people. You know, time is a difficult one. You know, different time zones. I don't know. I turn my phone off at a certain point because I was getting tired of the early morning calls. But time zones are real, and they're a challenge to navigate through. So there's great tools for working through that too. Tim, you're back on.
All right,
I am back. Any luck?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay, I swear I'm familiar with the microphone icon. I did not have it muted. I don't know what was going on there, but I got a little bit of a different spin on this. I would say that, we use the term easy. I do agree that it's easier than ever to find talent all over the world. I mean, we've got recruiters that sit in, I'll give you an example, Shreveport, Louisiana. One of my top recruiters works out of Shreveport, and he finds people in Israel, in Australia, in Belgium, in Germany, you name it. He is fantastic. And you don't have to be there. However, on the contract staffing side, there are many countries where you do have to have a brick and mortar location in that country to legally employ contractors. So it's definitely kind of that push and pull again. Yeah, we can find them for you from anywhere, but we might need to have a local company to run them through, to be that local contact based upon those local in-country laws.
Well, and we've actually seen that with a lot of our clients, where they had international talent on work visas in the US. And then as the pandemic rolled out and the international workers went to their home countries, the clients were still wanting to engage with them, but they were going to engage them in Israel or Italy or Germany or you name it. And you can do that, but you have to know how to employ them in those international locations. You can't pay them through your U.S. payroll, pay U.S. remittances for an international employee, right? You'll have to employ them in their home country and do the remittances in those countries. So finding solutions around that is key, right?
Hey, Jeff, you just mentioned something really important, the whole paying and billing in the same currency, because it doesn't always work out that way. You have to when you talk to your clients, you're letting them know, hey, if I'm going to pay in, Australian dollars, we want to bill you in Australian dollars too, to avoid any type of negative impact from exchange rate fluctuations and stuff like that. So super important to get those lined up.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I know there's solutions out there, but I'm going to bring it up to you guys to talk about some of the solutions you've seen to some of these unique situations as you go across international boundaries, some of the solutions you've seen out there to help with certain issues around currency or employment law or payroll taxes. How have different members and your organizations helped out? Are there solutions out there?
Well, I mean, personally, I feel that you ought to do what you do well, and hopefully that's recruiting. And you ought to be recruiting the right people to fill the roles, and you ought to let somebody else, and in Tim's case, it's built into the network, but in other cases, you have to look outside and you have to find somebody that what they do is they function as employer of record, or they handle the payments and the tax processing and all that. I don't think it's wise to. I don't think it would be wise to consider doing that between something that sounds simple like the U.S. and Canada or the U.S. and Puerto Rico. I mean, I think you want to find situations where you have a provider, and I know People 2.0 has some of those, but you got to have experience, knowledge, and people in place that understand the laws, understand currencies, understand taxation. You cannot do that and be a recruiter too. If you're doing both of those, then you're a superstar.
I think you're spot on, Dave. It's really hard to be great at both, for sure. You need, your great, excellent recruiter who's going out and finding the talent, and then you need a company like P2O, or there are others out there, but not as good, that provide those international solutions, for sure. Because that international business, it's really hard to wing it. I mean, you might be able to get away with that for a little while and not really be totally honest on the in the know regarding VAT taxes and in-country regulations and stuff like that. But that's going to catch up to you sooner or later, especially when you start to work with bigger companies that have a global presence, who are very familiar with the different rules because they're in those different countries. They want to know that we know what we're doing, and we're not going to put either them or our contractors in any type of jeopardy or harm's way regarding how we're paying, billing, and taxing, et cetera. So I think you're right, Dave. You really need experts at that. Don't stick to what you know. We're experts at sourcing high, great talent, and use a company like us or another company to provide that back office support.
And Tim, as you pointed out, I mean, even from a standpoint of engaging candidates to fill roles, you have to understand the legalities in different marketplaces. So, if you're going to do that in China or some other places, I mean, you need to know what the rules are, and not understanding the rules is not going to be an excuse for when you break one and you have, a severe penalty because you've done something wrong. So it's really good to have a partner on the ground, whether it be employer of record or a trading partner from the standpoint of another recruiter that you're working with, who knows the local rules and can help you navigate those.
Yeah, and one of the things that actually, and I don't know how you've experienced it, but licensing is incredibly popular once you get outside of the U.S. borders as well. You have licensing in some jurisdictions in the U.S., but outside the border, especially in Europe, licensing it when it comes to being a temporary employer is important, and even recruiting licenses. And so having that local knowledge, just because you can recruit may not mean you can actually do it legally, right? So it's important to also know the legislative issues, and it's a constant shifting scenario with and we'll continue to see that shift in legislation and taxation, especially as governments wake up from their COVID spending situation. They're going to have to pay for all of it at some point. And in a lot of cases, that will come through employment tax and taxation. So, the whole idea of the other topic of independent contractors is, and the gig economy, the COVID and the pandemic has really accelerated the remote working model and the online platform space. But the whole increase in the gig economy, it just doesn't mean everybody's independent contractors. And I'm not sure how much experience each of you have with that, but are you starting to see a shift towards more independent contractors or less? Issues with that? I know, of course, in the US, it's a very popular topic around misclassification of independent contractors. But are you seeing that on an international basis as well, and some solutions around that?
Yeah, great question, Jeff. One thing you mentioned, I definitely want to go back to is, the fact that the laws change so frequently. So you might think that you're on top of what the rules and regulations are, even in the U.S. I'll give you a good example. With COVID, we placed somebody on assignment and they tested positive for COVID right on the first day of the assignment, and we were on the hook for paying them during the quarantine period. So, that's one of those things that, nobody could have foreseen, but you need to be on top of those things all the time. Getting back to the ICs you mentioned, yeah, about a third of our contractors are independent contractors, so we're very familiar with it. In fact, I would say almost all of our internationals are what they would call self-employed. So that's even more important with them to make sure that they're properly classified, they're vetted, that they really do meet the IC classifications or qualifications depending on the country they're working out of. So I do think that that model is becoming more and more common. We talk about the gig economy, and in effect, all those gig workers are ICs, and it's amazing the unforeseen circumstances sometimes. I guess you probably are familiar with the AB5 resolution that passed in California that Uber spent $20 million on to make sure that they weren't going to have to classify their drivers as employees. They won that battle. Now I'm hearing or reading that there are a bunch of supermarket chains in California that are laying off all of their unionized drivers and hiring ICs to do that instead. So, just an example of how quickly things can change on a dime.
Yeah.
Tim, I'm just noting there's a couple comments that are coming in, and maybe we could talk about some of those. One of them is from Richard. He apparently goes by the Staffing Shark, and he says he's big on video resumes. I'm just wondering if anybody has any experience with video resumes, which is a great way of kind of accomplishing the cross-border challenges. You're in a different time zone kind of a thing. Is anybody doing anything like that?
Video resumes are not brand new. They have been around for a while. We used to have a program called ConferView, where it was kind of a closed circuit TV, so you could interview your candidate live via television. But there are pros and cons to that. There's some pitfalls. Obviously, you do have to worry about any type of people evaluating somebody on other than their work experience, right? You can see somebody and you might make a decision based upon that, which is obviously illegal, right? And then I actually one of our network members has recently introduced a program where he'll solicit questions from his client that they want him to ask the candidates. He'll ask the candidates that live on the camera, and then submit that as a sort of a video resume. And I think one of the things it does help with is making sure that the person has good communication skills depending on the job they're in. But that's a little bit off topic, obviously, for what we're talking about here.
Sure.
But there's the time zones, but there's also cultural differences as well. And on the heels of the diversity conversation we had slightly earlier in the session here, just before ours, the cultural norms in doing business internationally, are they an obstacle? How has some of your members overcome that? Language barriers, these types of things. What are you seeing as some best practices to overcome some of those cultural differences? Is it hire staff locally? Is it hire diverse talent on your teams to go after those target markets? What have you seen with some of your members?
I think everybody, is unique, and it kind of depends where the home country is and where the need is. So, where the client is based and where the job's going to be located. So some of them are more complex than others. Some of them it's fairly simple because, English ends up being the primary business language in both countries. And others, it's much more of a struggle, and there needs to be more of a handoff that happens between the person that has the client relationship and the person that's going to find the candidate. So I think each situation is rather unique, and there is no, this is the way it always works. It's just, you have to go into it with an open mind and find out how are you going to solve the uniqueness of the problem that's put in front of you.
For sure. Tim, have you seen different ways that your members have attacked different markets and going global? Have they hired diverse talent on their teams, or as they've gone after countries that were more in line with their cultural norms, be it Western versus Eastern norms, or etc.? How has some of that been overcome?
Most of the international opportunities that I've worked on have been our domestic clients looking for, to Dave's point, English is the global business language now. So they're looking for English-speaking resources in other countries that might have a lower cost than they would in the U.S. So that really hasn't been a huge challenge for us from a language perspective, because they have to have those communication skills to qualify for the job that we're looking for them. So that hasn't been a huge issue. I'm trying to read some of the questions here too. I see one about do we recommend acquisition as the easiest way to expand globally? No, I would not say that. I would say that partner with companies that have expertise overseas is very important. But again, I think like I said earlier, MRI is known primarily for perm placement. Well, one of our main jobs is to go out to every one of our clients and say, we do more than just perm. We do contract as well too. So it's sort of the same what we're talking about earlier. They think we're just domestic or US based or only going to find talent for them in the US. But we work with companies that have, locations in 10, 20, 30 different countries around the world. Incumbent on us to make sure that they know that we're capable of providing those resources wherever they are. And that goes back to just relationship building and sales.
Yeah, I couldn't think of a more complicated way of expanding globally than acquisition. I mean, it'd probably be easier to go and start your own company in another location, but I wouldn't do that either. I mean, I think if you're going to start, unless you have massive resources to apply to this, then I would say the best way to start is to leverage somebody else's ability in another market as a partner, as opposed to going it alone, either through acquisition of a business there, where you would get a partner, obviously, or starting your own business there. Those would be complicated ways. I would start with partnering, and then if you find that it's a fabulous market and you want to buy into it, then good for you. Acquisition is one way to get there. There is another question in here that I think Javier had about EOR, and they were wondering, I think, Tim, what's your method for handling these payments and employer situations around the world that you're working on?
Yeah, so we do use an EOR or AOR, agent of record solution. Okay. As I said earlier, I think all but a handful of our contractors overseas are self-employed. So we would use an agent of record solution there, and we do outsource that. To your point, Dave, I mean, don't try to do something that you're not really good at. Find somebody who is, outsource that to them. Like we tell our clients all the time, your core competency isn't recruiting, ours is. Well, stick to our core competency, and somebody else involved that can help us with this stuff. I'm just thinking of some of the other situations we come across. VAT tax I mentioned before. We had to get a company called BDO, huge giant global tax company involved, or Fragaman might be a company that many people are familiar with on the immigration side. So there are a lot of really great companies. I don't want to make this just a P2O ad, but they're fantastic to work with because they are physically located in 60, 70 different countries around the world. So it does make it a lot easier for us to expand our reach because of that.
Yeah, and you did mention the alternative is to do the traditional route, right? And talk to tax advisors, talk to legal advisors, talk to employment lawyers, and set up your entities there. And so there is that option, right, as well. And there is more and more information out there, and the world's getting smaller, but it is a leap of faith a little bit by setting up your own entity in certain jurisdictions. What we have seen as clients is some that they'll use the employer of record or agent of record service in different jurisdictions until they get to a size that they say, it makes sense for us to establish our own permanent resident or permanent establishment there, and then set up our own shop. And that often will happen in an EOR situation too, where you do have to think about your permanent establishment rules of that country. And once you get to a certain size, it may make more sense to move into a permanent setting up shop as well. But depending on the circumstance, there's different options you can go forward with.
I see they're asking us to wrap up soon, Tim or Jeff.
All right.
So you were asking for examples at one point. I don't know how much time we have left, but I mean, I think you have a decision to make. You can work wherever you want nowadays, and COVID is living proof of that. So decide what market you want to be in, decide where you have expertise, and apply it. It does not have to be in the place where you wake up every morning. We had a member who decided they didn't want to participate in what was a recessionary period in Australia about maybe 8 years ago, something like that. He just decided he would no longer work jobs in Australia. He would work jobs in North America. And his business completely shifted to a North American focus over a matter of months. And he didn't participate in the local recession, but rather participated in what was a more stable economy in another part of the world. So you have a lot of flexibility nowadays. Think about it and apply it.
Tim, closing remarks?
Pardon me?
Closing remarks?
Oh, yeah. First of all, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Dave. It's been great talking to you guys. And thank you, Jan, again for hosting this. But, I would say don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to dip your toe in the water because, like you said, Jeff, yeah, the U.S. Staffing market is huge. And there's probably plenty of business for all of us there. But there's a lot more outside of our borders, too. And I think what Dave said earlier, too, if we're not providing these solutions to our end clients, we'll find somebody who does. So let's make sure that you're the first one there and making sure that they're fully aware of all of your capabilities. And, there are a lot of great companies. I see one of the questions here is, how many global players are there in your opinion? Myriad, a lot of them for sure. I mean, some of the biggest staffing companies in the world are headquartered overseas, as we're all aware. So the U.S. is behind the global market as far as contract staffing, certainly W-2 penetration. But the opportunities are myriad, and partner with a good, solid, well-versed company that's not going to put you or your end client in a bad spot, and you can go forward with confidence and look for new business outside of your borders.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Dave and Tim, for a great conversation on the opportunities and the how-to expand across your borders into global markets. I think once again, if 2020 ever taught us anything, is you have to be resilient and you have to be creative in continuing your business operations and look for markets. And I thank you for your time and your expertise from your experiences over time with your network members. And I want to also thank Gustav for hosting the World Staffing Summit. It's been a great day. And I want to hand it off for closing remarks to Jan. And thank you again.
Cheers, everyone.